And I will now move on to introduce our next speaker. So from non-canonical media experiences to botanical machines, we will now end the morning session with some very, maybe could we say canonical examples, the Villa Savoye and the Corbusier apartment. I'm very happy to introduce you to Paola Caramucza. She is a professor at the Ecole Nationale Supérieure d'Architecture de Versailles, and she has also connections to the UAV in Venice. She has a PhD in preservation of architectural heritage from the Politecnico di Milano, and she has been recently working on was recently working on a research project with the UAV and the Fondation Le Corbusier. She will be talking to us today about the Villa Savoye and the Corbusier apartment. And without further ado, I would pass it on to her, and welcome, Paola.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, Vera, for this kind introduction, and thank you, Roberto, for inviting me to share with you this experience that I developed with a company. Can you see the screen? Yeah.
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you. And the two experiences that I developed with ABIM company, which are a technical and engineer office with expertise on analysis on buildings, existing buildings. And well, before to show you these two case study, I want just to say that I am an architect and I am always been working on preservation, and preservation as on heritage, and preservation for me means not, of course, not to frozen architecture, not to think of architecture from something that is closed in itself, but in continuous evolution. And so preservation, to preserve is to govern the transformation, and with the aims to maximize the pre-existence and mostly the material. So that means that I find 2 points very important on this vision of preservation. One is the maintenance as the action of this kind of preservation, and the other is the knowledge of the building, of the material of the building, of the body of the building. And I have always been interested on this knowledge phase that normally is preliminary to the restoration project, and how to combine up knowledge that put together an historical research and an in situ investigation and a lot of other data coming from different source, different action. It's something that I've always interested me. And of course, in the awareness that the knowledge is for itself something that is always implementable, that have to be always developed. So it's always increasing, and knowledge for this reason too, what maybe in my project, maintenance is a way to preserve this possibility to increase the knowledge, okay? And during here, as I was interested also into the tool to manage, organize this knowledge that comes from different sources and from different subjects, I turned my attention to several technologies, and in the last years, I was interested on the 3D data model. We are used to speak about BIM, okay, more On pre-existing building, we are used to speak on HBIM, Historical Building Information Model, but I'm more interested to speak about a better information management, maybe. Okay, so for this reason, I met this company in Paris who called ABIM, and which is a multidisciplinary company, and it's here is a part of the team of ABIM team. We are multidisciplinary company, but we are also multi-generational. And this is, I think, is important right now. And we have engineer, we have an architect, and preservation architect, and then we have the restoration stone restorations specialized on this stone and plaster restoration specialists. And then, of course, we have software designer. Okay, and we put in place a methodology in order to build our model, this 3D model, and I try to show you quickly this methodology. I kept in this slide this image of an ancient building, okay, not in the modernist one, because I'm quite convinced that there is a continuity in terms of method, in terms of path of knowledge, in order to deal with the construction of this kind of tools. Okay, we construct our own library of the object, starting from the historical research. So mostly starting from archive, and then combining this with the on-site measurement. Okay, and so then we build this kind of 3D model that can have different possibility to use for office that manage the heritage, as well as to support project choices. And our purpose is to construct, or better, to rebuild a 3D building model instead than surface molding. Okay, so we take care on the data collected and on the building of each parametric element. And well, at the end, the building, the physical building, is on the center of our attention, and he collects several kind of research, and it could be used after for, I can try to explain with this schema, two different possibilities of use. Okay, and maybe we can talk to discuss to a wider also use of these tools. Okay, now we move to our case study. The first one is the Villa Savoye. Okay, at the end of 2017, ABIM and the Centre des Monuments Nationaux, which is the public institution that manage this building in France, we won a call for project in the context of the transition plan on the numeric buildings. Okay, this is a huge program in order to develop numerical digital tools in the field of the building, the construction. And we propose an innovative qualitative approach through this 3D model data in order to optimize and rationalize, maybe, this, the question of maintenance, of the exploitation and the management of the building. Okay, and this is a huge question for this kind of institution that have to manage a lot of heritage building. Okay, so we propose to build a 3D model data and working on this kind of building that are, of course, the kind, we can use this word, a masterpiece, even if also on the notion of masterpiece we should debate right now, but actually is a really well-known architecture and is an icon of modern architecture. And this status of icon, started since from the Le Corbusier will that he published Villa Savoye and the first edition, Allemande, the German edition of Complete. So in 1930, he published Villa Savoye, describing it as an icon of his thought, okay? And actually the villa wasn't yet finished, was still in construction site when he published, okay, this project. And of course, through a very comprehensive bibliography, this status of icon, I may say a myth, doesn't stop to arise and consolidate, also through a very important historiography, okay? But what is interesting me and what is quite clear is the parallel in a synchronic way, in parallel from this construction of the myth, of the image, of the icon, there was also the physical, I cannot say the physical dissolution, but the physical, the decay, and a complex history, started from icon, then to ruin, to abandon. The villa was occupied by, as is well known, the German army and then the US army during the World War II, and then was abandoned for a while, and then was an object of a big restoration asked from Le Corbusier himself in the 60s, okay? And in 1966, a big restoration project by Jean Dubuisson was launched, okay? And we started, in order to model this building, a little bit from here, from this parallel life and from the attention to the history and the biography of the villa. Biography, it means that you are looking to the life of the building, not just the design phase, but all the lifelong, okay? And we started from the bibliography, and I want just to show you this because for us it's a very important point of the depart. This is the Les Heures Claires, is a book from a Spanish historian of architecture, Joseph Kessler, complicated to say for me, and he was very detailed on the design and construction phases based on archive documents. The other one is described and from Susanna Caccia and Carlo Olmo, which are historical of architecture and preservation architect, a very detailed history of the villa between 1948 until 1968. Okay, that's just a period of his biography, so until the first big restoration. And this for us were the base, and that we feel they integrate with, of course, the research in the archive through drawing, of course, to documents, to build, to letters, and to images, and thanks to the photos shot during the construction site as well as during the decay phases, which is not very good for the building, but it's very good for our possibility to know the structure, to know this part of the building that normally are not visible. Okay, so normally we start from this archive research. We made database in order to organize and to sort the information from this document, because we have all the time we need to go back to the document, and this makes us this research quickly. In parallel of this, of course, we we did a 3D point cloud. Actually, for the Villa Savoye, we did 2-point cloud in order to verify the data. I mean that I am not so interested in scan to beam process, but I am much more interested in the passage from the archive, if you want, from the archive to the screen, okay? Passing through on-site investigation. And well, first step, it has been to create the geometry of Villa Savoye, thanks to the 3D point cloud, as well as the verification of the document, the drawing and the plans. And then we started from the beginning, from the basement, and this kind of drawing, I'm always very interested in me, how in Le Corbusier office they put together construction topics and organization function of the plan or composition of the plan. And we, of course, we cross the data from, for example, the basement. This is the cave, the place when we, right now we can find also the boiler. So a lot of technical item test was really interesting for us. No? So we had the opportunity to follow different change of the organization of this part of the plan, and we start also, of course, for the reconstruction of the building from the foundation, from the foot of the building. And we have the opportunity, thanks to the collaboration of the Fondation Le Corbusier, they are always very interested in this kind of experience. And they have always supported the use of the technology in this kind of study. So they give to us this draw that wasn't that's coming not from Le Corbusier office, but from the constructor. Okay, so these are the executive draw of the concrete structure, starting from the foot, from the cement, which are really the foundation of the pilotis. Okay, here I just want to show you some notes. In order to show you a method of work, we take note, we study the document, and we transfer the information on the 3D model. Of course, just to say, not each footprint is equal to the other. There is a different typology, and there are different technical details, such that hole for the evacuation of raining water inside in the pilotis, okay, which of course the dimension, the diameter, okay, 8 centimeter in 4 different pilotis. Just to try to explain you the level of the time that we have to reach in order to build this kind of model. And then, okay, we start to model the basement floor and the foundation, as well as the slab of the basement floor, with all the detail of the rebars, of the concrete rebars on the beams of these slabs. And then, well, I don't want to show you all the passage, but just to give you an overview of this work that aims to reconstruct the structure, pilotis, beam, slabs, and to reconstruct the detail of rebar, which is not useless, because if you're doing some kind of structural research, but also historical research on concrete, which is a little bit my interest, and is very interesting to put together this, for example, this detail with the rules, with the development of the rules in concrete construction at that time, just as an example. Then we cross also the plan and the detail with the letter in the correspondence between Le Corbusier and the constructor. And of course, we have many information about the cost, but also about the transformation, the in preview during the construction site. For example, the construction of these big beams, concrete beams that allow to take off a pillar in order to go inside in the famous garage that organize also the form, the organization of the plant, in order that the car can go around and get the park. Then another interesting document that we really used, it was this this movie. Actually is a movie shot during the construction site by Ernest Weisman. It was a collaborator in Le Corbusier at that time. It's a movie that was showed at the Fondation Le Corbusier in an exposition in 2017, and we cross-checking these images with, as you can see there, the detail and the plan. Okay, and it's, well, you can see also Le Corbusier and mostly Pierre Jeanneret in visit on the building construction site, and a lot of detail such as lab, mâche-fer walls, okay, and the concrete structure that we transfer on our 3D data model. And of course, we met this monsieur. This is Monsieur Cormier, which is the owner of this is the contractor and the one who designed the concrete structure. And we haven't found yet a lot of information on him, but I think it deserves also an historical attention, as well as the other construction company that built, for example, Villa Stein in Garches, who was Sommer. There is a very, very rich history behind the construction side of each architecture, and of course on the Le Corbusier architecture too. But dealing with the concrete structure, concrete history, is also dealing with this figure, this person. People. Okay, then we move on until the superficial material as a plasters, as a detail, always using the archive document, crossing with the surveys on site service and survey, and finally we construct each part of the villa. Here you can see the 3D model crossed with the 3D point cloud, and the other part just the 3D model. Okay, each element is described, and in his characteristic, technical characteristic, and so on. We found, for example, the dosage of concrete, the mixed design. Okay, not just the geometry of element, and each element is linked to the document who described them. For this reason, is a kind of semantic 3D data. Then we move, because we were working on a matter of maintenance, and because of we were trying to understand as far as possible the building, all the networks, the system networks, I mean hydraulic and electrical system, which were reconstructed during the Jean Dubuisson restoration in 1966. Okay, because during time each element of the heating system, which were a little bit weakly since the beginning, as we can see in the Madame Savoye letters, and all the heat and the facility of the lighting network were lost. And so these are in part the survey of the state of the building in 1966, and we cross with the actual state. So thanks to the on-site visit, and we construct also because this kind of model are really, how can I say, adapt in order to create this kind of network, the heating network of Villa Savoye right now, the pipeline for the water distribution, and the wastewater network that combined together are a little bit the result, the network inside, also in the invisible part of the villa, of course. And the last network that we put in the model, we reconstruct in the model, is the electrical switches and light. There is also a history of each element, such the switch and the handle also too, because they were lost in 1966. There isn't any handle or switch in place, still in place. Then they go to Villers-la-Roche in order to find a model to recreate a handle and the switches for Villa Savoye. For example, just to think how a restoration work is also an interpretation and retranscription work. Okay, and this is just a slide to show how all this data coming from different and various sources and very heterogeneous sources can build a model that is always implementable in terms of knowledge. And bon, this kind of work, of course, is a work that allows you to know in deeply the building. We are moving in the field maybe of the micro history, and allow you also to think about how to retranscribe an icon to talk about the materiality, to think, to work on the materiality of an object and the entanglement between materiality and intangible values is also a matter of interpretation, of course. For example, in these two images, this is Villa Savoye as it was published in 1931 in the L'Architecture Vivante, review by Gian Badovici. And when you can see this element that actually we found in the plan, in the 1966 plan, as an element of the heating, as what I could see, and in the time was lost. Of course, a lot of things were rebuilt, but also is a matter of choice and of a project's choice to keep in place of to erase part in the restoration project. Okay, and then I try to show you mostly a method, and then we move to the other case study. We moved to Paris to the Le Corbusier apartment studio, which for us, for a BIM experience, comes before the one of the Villa Savoye. And this experience, this work was linked to the restoration of the apartment led by Fondation Le Corbusier. Okay, and okay, the apartment of Le Corbusier is in the quartier de Auteuil, in the 16 arrondissement. Okay, in the west part of Paris. It was built between 1931 and 1934, and Le Corbusier negotiated a part of the building, the roof, the higher part of the building, in order to create his own apartment. And he inhabits there since 1934 until his death in 1965. So more than 30 years he spent there of his life. And then this apartment, once again, the biography of an architecture, became the André Wojanski office for more or less 20 years. André Wojanski was a collaborator of Le Corbusier, of course, and then was also the residence for fellows of Fondation Le Corbusier. Okay, and despite the fact that right now is listed in a World Heritage UNESCO list, as well as the Villa Savoye, of course, since 2016 and actually Fondation Le Corbusier knows that the knowledge of this building and the knowledge of the apartment was not so deep, also because Fondation Le Corbusier decided to make a restoration campaign. So in this occasion, they decided this was the opportunity to improve the knowledge of this building. And the involvement of ABIM company follows the study that Fondation Le Corbusier asked to the EPLF, which was a historical study written by Franz Graf and Giulia Marino on this apartment. And it was in 8 years, an historical study that takes in account the apartment from 1931 until 2014. So they were focused on the biography of this apartment, and they propose a series of investigation in order to implement the knowledge, and mostly in order to know, on one hand, the structure of the apartment, okay, the material, and also all that was a problem of sealing, from heating and technical aspect, in order to support the restoration decision and the restoration choices. And so it's in this context that ABIM started to work on the apartment, always starting from the archive research, and thanks and based also on the study of EPLF, of course. Then once again, we organize an important number of documents in a database in order to build the 3D model. Okay, and here I just want to show you some steps. Okay, at that time we started from a 2008 survey, okay, in CAD survey, and we compare with the plan that were published on the œuvre complète, and in general the plans in the Le Corbusier archive. Then, of course, we cross-checking this with all the detail of the document in order to define the geometry of the apartment. The apartment is organized on 2 levels, okay, in 7th and 8th floor of the building. And the first step of the construction of the 3D model was to check and to verify the archive document and the archive survey with the in-situ investigation, mostly using IR camera, infrared instrument, in order to make this passage, okay, from archive to on-site investigation and then to the model. We also verify all the geometry linked with the rules, with the urban rules, which were the rules that Le Corbusier had to use to respect in order to build the distance from the profile of the building. Because in Paris, mostly at that moment, there were some urban rules that in order to organize the rooftop, they had to be more, how can I say, inside on the profile, okay, of the plan. Sorry. Here you can see the geometry and that he had to respect. Okay, these are infrared investigation that allow us to verify the archive document. These are beams, concrete beams, and concrete ribs of this vault. Actually, is this vault that define the volume and the internal space of the apartment. Then we move on to some in situ non-destructive or a little destructive investigation, crossing by the thermal camera, and we found this kind of material in place that is a material to insulate, is a material that Le Corbusier often used in his building at that moment. It's called solomite, which is, and we found this also in the summary of the material used and paid by Le Corbusier, is all the time, every time that we find a material, we launch a research on the archive, on different also archive. Solomite is material and panel made by highly compressed through and retaining by metallic wire, okay, in order to be strength and to be hard and to make this kind of insulation. This page you can find often solomite advertising in the Esprit Nouveau, for example, the review published by Le Corbusier. There is a huge network between the production of the material and the use on the architecture of Le Corbusier and the publish of all the published work in Le Corbusier. Of course, our attention was focused on all the material, for example, the Nevada brick, which are the glasses brick that made this well-known glassed facade, glazed facade, and all the light inside in the apartment. Okay, and these bricks were put in place with a very, very thin joint, which is different today, and this was also a problem, a technical question for the restoration, because it's more fragile as a part of the walls in the apartment. Then another important part was the polychromy. The polychromy has very studied in deep by a specialist on the polychromy, and we put this information on the model too. Okay. And here you can see the next passage in the Revit passage of the 3D model, always verified with the 3D point cloud in order to keep together all this information. We had also the opportunity to make a comparison between the material used to build the 3D model and the material that Le Corbusier paid, because this was the material that Le Corbusier paid by himself, and is not so different. We are a very, very slight difference, okay, in terms of quantity. And this 3D model was used for several kinds of simulation. Okay, first of all, thermal simulation, because it was one of the big problems of the apartment since when Le Corbusier inhabited there, and then the hydrothermal simulation in order to understand if during the restoration work some transformation of the layer could be impacted the preservation of concrete ribs. You know, preservation of concrete is a quite fragile and delicate question in the preservation of modern architecture. And then they made also a light simulation in order to think if in the future some art, some sculptures, some painters by Le Corbusier were exposed in this apartment, what does mean in terms of preservation of the sculpture, of the objet d'art de Le Corbusier. And then we move a little bit further, because as we were arrived to the surfaces of the element, and of course to the furniture of the element, combining all this knowledge, we try to understand if with this model we can also reproduce a kind of chronology of the transformation of the apartment. Le Corbusier started to transform the apartment since 1939, and mostly he changed the color. Okay, the palette of color changed often during the 30 years of Le Corbusier life. Inside, he called this construction site permanent, and of course there is mostly a matter of transformation about the furniture, okay, furniture and carpet and color. But one thing that seems to me interesting on this kind of model, that this model can put together, can entangle the construction question with the interior question and transformation, okay, all in one tools, in one element, in one 3D model data. Of course, each element is linked to the document, to the documentation that allow us to model it. And now we are thinking with Fondation Le Corbusier how to improve the documentation, open to a wider public this kind of tool, because Fondation Le Corbusier is always interested to have more and more, for example, photographs, because a lot of people visited during the year the architecture, and they are interested to gather all this kind of documentation. And I don't know, but it seems to me this approach could be interesting because it's a very inclusive and collaborative approach to the knowledge. And so I hope also to share this knowledge and to transmit this kind of knowledge, which is in one hand an historical knowledge, open also other subject, the construction side, the company, the technical question, and in the other hand is of course a matter of more technical information and data. But I think maybe this kind of tools that have a lot of limits. First of all, the representation, the way to represent as an architectural object, and the really possibility to share with a lot of people this kind of tool. All these questions, technical questions, are still open. But what seems to me very interesting is this inclusive and participative approach that can find in this kind of method. And if you are interested in the restoration of this apartment, and as we are talking about heritage and media, there you can find on YouTube this movie, this documentary that was shot during the restoration work and describe what is a restoration site like this. Okay, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Paola. And thank you for opening up the door to complex way of thinking with many kinds of media that are entangled and sort of interwoven. I would like to invite Marina Ezerskaya and Louise Plassard to ask you a few questions on behalf of the students of the department.
Yeah. May I to stop the presentation?
Yes, you can, yes.
Thank you.
Marina, Louise?
Thank you.
Hello, Paola. Thank you for being with us today. We really enjoyed your lecture, and we just want to ask you a couple of questions. So my question is, a life of a building can be lasting, but it's still limited. As you explained, BIM 3D model contains an extensive amount of information, such as materials, dating, energy qualities, archive references, and others. Can BIM 3D model in a long perspective replace the actual building when it's gone?
No, I don't know. Oh, okay. I want to say one thing. This entanglement between materiality and materiality is something that really involved me in many questions. Okay. First of all, I'm more concerned about the possibility to preserve the virtual 3D model than the really material of the apartment, because we know very well there is all in the digital humanities, we can say, there is the problem to preserve the possibility to reach in the future again the data, because the how can I say, the format change. Okay, so I'm really worried about the preservation of digital knowledge. Okay, much more than the preservation of materiality. I don't know why, maybe because I manage a little bit more, I am used to manage more the materiality, the preservation of materiality than the virtual preservation. I don't think that one can substitute the other, okay? I'm much more thinking to the question about philology. Okay, you know, when we were not we, but we were writing a copy of the book in order to conserve it and to transmit it. Okay, and I think, and I have always been very interested in the topic of the copy. Okay, the monument and his double. Maybe we can talk about the monument, the heritage. Also, this passage between monument and heritage could be interesting to think about. But I am interested on the monument is copy, is double, and maybe this is a 3D digital copy. I don't know if it's a more, okay, we can speak about virtual reality on augmented reality, okay? But I am always interested in the knowledge linked to the monument, a building, and the possibility to share it, because I think the heritage is mostly a matter of knowledge, of study, in my opinion, and also a matter to share this. Because it's not just me that I can save the heritage, but I think it's, well, I want to see this as a participative and open action. And maybe this is an instrument I tools. I don't know. I don't know. I just thinking about. Okay.
Thank you. Maybe Louise?
Yes, hello.
Hello.
I have also another question for you.
Thank you.
So you talked and you presented us how you're using BIM in the research of the two case studies. And in your point of view, what do you think is the main asset that BIM can bring and that challenges the traditional workflow of design and project?
Are you asking me the relationship between this 3D model and and the project and the activity of project.
The use of BIM in the projects. In the
Okay, actually, BIM is. I'm not so interested in building itself and its technology. I am interested in the fact that BIM push you, even if you don't want, to be collaborative, okay, to work with other person, with other subject and so on. But of course, work on restoration field is multidisciplinary for its nature. You cannot be multidisciplinary when you have to deal with an heritage, with a project of restoration and preservation and so on. So I don't know if this is the beam of the 3D model data, this kind of representation and this kind of path to reach this kind of representation can change the way to design also a preservation project. What is interesting also for me, this is a question that I asked to myself too, and the other is if this 3D model can change our perception of architecture, the way we experiment the architecture. Not because they are better, not at all, but because they become more and more used, I have to say, because I found more and more interesting on this, also for all, not just from the architect, but mostly for the office, the institution that have to deal with heritage. And what is interesting me is to look at the development of this, even if I don't know, I don't have a really clear idea. But for example, we just one call for project to do a BIM, you can say BIM model of a neighborhood, okay, in the urban scale. So there is a passage between BIM, this is building information model, to the SIM, which is city information model, okay, in order to work on different scale. And this is another question that I have to explore, for example. And I don't know, maybe next time we could speak about another experience and how I can see a little bit more better if this have an impact into design and into architectural design.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paola.
Thank you, Vera.
It is now the moment to pause for a longer break before we start the second session in the afternoon. I would like to thank Marina and Luis for their questions. Thank you, Paola, for your presentation and your answers. This is all from my side. The afternoon session will be chaired by Kai Reaver, who is here with us. And I'll just pass it on to Roberto if you want to say some words before we break for lunch. Thank you.
No, good. Bon appetit. And see you back to 15. We will be on time. So as we have seen this morning, it's very challenging to be able to stay on our program. See you in 1 hour. Thank you very much to everybody for the moment. Take a break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.